The Mouse Utopia Experiment Analysis by Destin. Before I get into what the Mouse Utopia experiment was, I would like to talk about the mindset people had during the experiment. Throughout the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, shortly after World War II, a group known collectively as the environmentalists were making a large push to prevent environmental degradation as well as overexploitation of the planet's renewable resources. Among these people were a group specifically known as the Neo-Malthusians. This term refers to the 18th and 19th century English scholar Thomas Robert Malthus. Malthus proposed that while the world's population may increase exponentially, food production can only increase linearly, leading to an eventual population drop known to the people as the Malthusian catastrophe. With word of the Malthusian catastrophe spreading, the movement exploded with popularity, driving people to invest in any science that could give any answer about the Malthusian catastrophe. This leads many researchers in the 50s and 60s to begin work investigating the effects of population growth, and among them was a man named John B. Calhoun. Born in 1917 Elkin, Tennessee, Calhoun grew and moved on to get his bachelor's degree in 1939 at the University of Virginia, and then later in his life in 1942, earning his MS and PhD at Northwestern. His bachelor's, MS, and PhDs were all in psychological fields. Later, in 1954, he was then employed at the Laboratory of Psychology of the National Institute of Mental Health, where he started his first rat utopia experiment. Before I move on, John B. Calhoun also is known for creating the terms behavioral sink and beautiful ones. Behavioral sink describing apparent behaviors in overcrowded population, and beautiful ones describe passive individuals who withdrew from all social interaction. Anyway, back to his rat utopian experiment. His first rat utopian experiment was conducted when John B. Calhoun's neighbor agreed to let him build a rat enclosure on unused woodland behind his house in Towson, Maryland. The experiment was to see the effects on rat behavior when given limited space but unlimited food, water, and protection from predators. The experiment conducted, however, was not successful since the population never increased due to unknown reasons. Calhoun would then later reintroduce the experiment in the National Institute of Mental Health, where the true horrors of his experiment began. The new experiment started much like the first, with unlimited water and food, as well as protection from predators and no disease. However, the space provided was even more limited than the previous experiment, and the design of the Utopia was greatly changed. The new design consisted of 4 square containers where food and water were provided in abundance here, and the way the rats could traverse the 4 containers were stairs leading here, here, and here. However, there was not a 4th stair linking all the containers together because Calhoun believed that if the rats had full circulation of travel, they would not experience the full population density effects, which he believed that the difficulty of travel was a major effect. Now, another design that they included was the bedding nests. The bedding nests consisted of a spiral staircase that led into a dark, secluded box with plenty of bedding to raise their young in peace. However, that was the only secluded place that the rats had. Other than that, the rest of the place was open for any rat to go to. As the experiment continued and the population of the rats skyrocketed, certain behavioral changes started to take effect. The once known rat utopia became rat hell, as males grew more aggressive, attacking any rats they encountered, some even forming to exclusively attack females, while other males became hypersexual, mating with anything they could. Females also changed their behavior to the point where they stopped caring for their own young, and in some instances attacked and ate their own young. These behavioral changes greatly affected the population of the rats, killing dozens of rats, leading to the eventual cannibalization of baby rats and full-grown adult rats. In the end of the experiment, there was a 96% mortality rate among all the rats, and the experiment ended with the remaining rats being so psychologically broken that they couldn't adjust back to normal rat society, usually dying in a corner alone. This experiment was then later published by Calhoun in 1962, becoming one of the 40 studies that changed psychology and one of the most cited studies in history. Calhoun later then closed the experiment with a call to action, saying that for an animal so complex as man, there is no logical reason why a comparable sequence of events should not also lead to the species' extinction. My conclusions on this experiment are: it was a really horrible experiment. However, it did give a lot of insight about behavioral changes in population density. Even though they were just rats, I think some behavioral changes the rats had would also be in, human changes if we had overpopulation. Like, for instance, mass violence, males attacking females, attacking males. I believe that would definitely be a thing if there was overpopulation in our country today. Another conclusion I draw from this experiment is that Calhoun really liked rats, apparently, and he thought that rats' minds were very similar to human minds. In my personal opinion, I would like to think that human minds are a little more intelligent, so I wouldn't think that if humans had overpopulation, they would start eating each other. I feel like we would just become more aggressive to each other in a sense. So, in my conclusion, I would say his experiment did give similarities to what I believe would happen if there was overpopulation in this country. Here's the information I cited. I cited from the Journal of History and the Bulletin of the World Health Organization. These are APA formatted, for psychology. And that's it. I'll see you later. Bye.